Hey guys, I'm Aleister,
And I'm Alseia.
and this is the Absurdium podcast.
Welcome, welcome! This is our 8th episode. I had to ask Alistair about which number episode we're on because I forgot.
Lucky number 8.
Is it lucky? I thought number 7 is lucky.
I feel like in certain cultures 8 is lucky, but I don't actually remember which ones.
I think it's 7.
Yeah?
Yeah.
7 is in a lot of cultures, but I swear I've heard of 8.
You have to Google it now because I'm curious.
Right on. While I'm doing that, can you explain to them what we're talking about today?
We are going to be talking about astrology today and if it has any actual scientific backing and if it has any scientific merit whatsoever.
Sounds about
Because
right.
I know some people believe in astrology and some people don't believe in astrology, and it's a fascinating topic that
Yeah.
our
absolutely.
coworker is very excited to talk about every time we speak to them.
Sounds about right.
Right? So,
8 is considered a lucky number in the Chinese culture.
just Chinese.
Chinese and other Asian cultures.
What? How did you search it? Is number 8 a lucky number?
8 as a lucky number.
No, just search a lucky number.
Lucky number 8.
No, not 8, just lucky number.
Oh. What am I looking for here?
Just a lucky number, not just.
Just to see
specific-
like the primary thing that comes up for
Yeah,
lucky number.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a Wikipedia article, but it's about like prime numbers and whatnot.
So nothing came up with search for lucky
second
numbers.
one, lucky number based on numerology.
Okay.
That would be relevant to today, but that looks like it would be a lot to click through to figure out what I'm looking at. So
Fascinating.
yeah, it's not the nice, concise answer we were looking for. I don't
So
think.
it's not in Google to just be like, here it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's that.
Yeah, not necessarily. There's another one, but it's a movie. That doesn't really help. So, yeah. But in Chinese culture, at least 8 is a lucky number. So, I was right-ish, I guess. That's rare.
So it says that in the US, as well as in Western cultures, the numbers 3, 7, and 12 are considered lucky. And according to superstitions, the 5 luckiest numbers are 3, 4, 8, 9, 12, 21, and 77. However, these numbers may not be considered lucky by all cultures.
Huh.
Which I
Interesting.
think I've heard someplace that number 4 is actually super unlucky in Asia. So that's why I was surprised that number 8 might be, because 8 consists of two
Right.
fours.
That's
But
fair.
again, I don't know.
Interesting. And I suppose 21 is just 3 sevens, and 77 is 11 sevens, so. Huh. Weird.
Maybe. But anyways, but yeah, astrology.
Yeah.
So what did you find?
I found a bit on the history and a lot on like criticisms and detractions from astrology and how it's not terribly scientific.
Okay, so what's the history?
History is kind of the origins of it, which shockingly is not like back in Plato's time and like, you know, who's the guy we're always talking about again?
Aristotle?
Aristotle, yeah. It's not Aristotle this time.
Okay, so what is the history?
It's kind of all over the place. It's really been like the study of bodies in the sky and how they relate to the human experience has kind of been going on since before timekeeping really began even. But there's a lot of it like 3,000 years before Common Era even it was being talked about. So, I don't know, it's old. Very old.
Well, what I found online is that astrology actually started out as you said, timekeeping, because that's the only way that was reliable enough to keep track of, like
Yeah.
days, seasons, time, because obviously in different seasons stars are different.
Right.
Because Earth rotates, thus different stars are visible throughout the year.
Yeah.
Or day.
Back
So-
when it originated, astrology and astronomy were kind of just the same thing.
Yeah, and
in a
I'm
way.
sure at that time they probably named, like, I know signs are named after the constellations,
Mm-hmm.
because there are also constellations that can be found, and maybe there were more like month based, because like as I know, astrological signs are based on date of birth, right?
Right.
Month of birth. So maybe, for example, which one do I know? Taurus, for example, right?
Yep.
Maybe the constellation of Taurus was most visible during May, the time of the, that is the sign is assigned to. Sign is assigned to. What a play on words. Yeah, so maybe that's how they, started naming them, or maybe that's why there is a correlation between that. Maybe because that's most visible at that time from that particular part of the world where they started it.
Right, yeah.
Because obviously you don't
see
see everything from every part of the world. You just see certain things from different parts. So yeah, I can see that happening, how timekeeping and stuff. And actually, so you said it's not scientifically proven and it's disproven multiple times. So what did you find?
I wasn't expecting to dive right into that, but a lot of it is basically just like how it's not really possible to measure or quantify things surrounding astronomy. It's a lot of like...
Oh, you mean astrology?
Yes, astrology. Sorry. It's very easy to quantify astronomy. Astrology, on the other hand, not so much. It's not really measurable. It's not testable. So like one of the basic principles of science is that you test something to failure and then you revise and you keep doing that until you find something that is infallible. And there's just not really a way to do that.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily find something infallible, because there isn't such a thing as infallible, because physics is still based on theories, and just because it's not disproven doesn't mean it's to be obsolete.
True, but to our current understanding at the very least.
Yeah, but I don't think that even they take it as infallible. I think they still take it as more like, okay, it's so far it's working, so let's just keep it up.
Right, yeah.
And see how it goes.
That's fair. I know a lot of people, or a lot of the articles I was reading, like to kind of link it to synchronicity in a way, which is the whole, just alignment of coincidences, basically, where it's like you can maybe draw the line between coincidences, but there's no hard evidence that one thing affected the other. So,
which is interesting, because I know our coworker proposed the reading of our birth charts, right? Because she gave me the birth chart and her birth chart, and then I went out to see mine because I was curious, and then I kind of we read yours, and it was kind of accurate, right?
It was,
surprisingly.
Yeah, and not like in a generalist, check the general boxes sense either.
Well, so. I feel like what psychology says about all the personality tests and astrology and everything like that is that it's general enough where it's almost applicable to everyone.
Right.
And very rare person goes out of their way to read every single line. I mean, every single sign or possibility or alignment or whatever you call it in the birth chart or astrology. So, for example, let's say I'm a Taurus, right? Just because we talked about Taurus before, so that's the only one I remember right now. So let's say I'm a Taurus and I was born in May, and this is my birth chart, and I only read my birth chart, for example, right?
Right.
And I haven't went out of my way and read every single signs and every single possibility. So I only know what I read about me, presumably, right?
Right, yeah.
But maybe if someone showed me someone else's birth chart and they told me that's yours, and I read it and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, that I can totally see myself there. So I feel like it's preconceived bias a little bit, because you're like, oh yeah, well, it's about me, so that applies, and then you start to nitpick and be like, well, yeah, I have this sort of personality.
Yeah, there's a bit of confirmation bias
and also
involved.
a little placebo effect too, because you're like, well, yeah. Because I was doing research on this topic, and how the placebo works, right? In testing, if you don't know, in medical testing, they make groups of sick patients, and they divide them into two groups, and then they give one patient's placebo medicine. Placebo meaning it has no actual value or medicinal properties. It's just, let's say, water, and or with some food dye or something, right? And the other people they give also water with food dye, but they tell one group that that's medicine, and the other group that is just water. And then you can see that people who received the placebo, the medicine, right? I'm putting quotation marks because it's just water. they get healthier
Right.
just by being in that state of mind.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
also speaks a lot on how interesting our brains are
Yeah.
in working and making us a certain way.
Yeah. If you get into the headspace of I'm gonna get better, sometimes you just get better.
Yeah, because I feel like you are more positive, you're working, you're kind of like more active, you're doing things towards your health.
Yeah.
But if you believe that you're not getting healthy, you're like, well, why struggle if I'm being sick anyways?
Right. There's
So
absolutely,
you don't do that steps anymore.
Yeah, there's absolutely a psychological aspect to health and like healing and whatnot.
Almost
so.
like will to live.
Yeah.
Right? If like you kind of have that will to get better because you believe that you're getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah.
But
Same as.
What I was talking about is that maybe people who read all the birth charts and like astrological signs and numerology and all that stuff that goes into personality, is that it's sort of a placebo, because they read that and they're like, oh, so I am stubborn, so I shall become stubborn.
Right.
And they kind of like play into that what they've read. And so now I'm wondering how much of that is actually what you're born with and how much of it is
kind of a self-fulfilling
what you absorbed and kind of internalized.
Right.
But at the same time, I've know people who believe in astrology and who don't know me or who get to know me a little bit. They can be like, oh my god, you're totally this. And I'm like, what? Like, I can see that about you. And I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But then someone, you're like, yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Like, I totally thought you were something different.
Huh.
But then when I read my birth chart, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I don't know if I believe in astrology per se, so
right.
It's kind of like, maybe not. We don't know.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the camp of not believing in it from a scientific perspective, but I like to keep an open mind in that, like, if it makes people's lives better or more easy to navigate, who am I to tell them they're wrong, you know?
Actually, talking from the scientific perspective, I read an article, a study from 1900s. Like, it was just like a prolonged study, so there's no one specific date, but the article itself was published in 1990.
Right.
And it did say that they did do an extensive research for over like 4,000 people or something. And in terms of like, not necessarily astrology per se, not signs, not numerology, nothing like that, but they did take an placement of the planets, certain planets. I think they said Mars, Moon, Jupiter, and Saturn. Maybe a little bit of Venus, but they mostly concentrate on this 4.
Right.
And they did say that they did find the correlation with people who were born, for example, under Mars in certain placement at certain time of birth, that they are more in military fighting leadership positions, where people in Saturn are more in scientific, more, you know, that side, and people who were born like in Moon, they're more poetic and dreamy like. And I think Jupiter, they said something along. It's either Jupiter, the scientist, or Saturn scientist, and another one was actors. I think Jupiter was scientists and Saturn was actors, and more like outgoing, that kind of actor, musicians kind of stuff.
Huh.
So they did find correlations to that, but it had nothing to do with signs. It had to do specifically with the placement of this specific planets at the very specific time, like in place.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah. So there is some grain of scientific research that was not disproven, but again, it really has nothing to do with specifically like signs. Only specific planets. I just want to highlight that we're not proving that astrology is correct. We're just proving that. Not even proving, but according to the scientific article that I read, is that
there's something to it.
That there is a correlation that more people who are born under a certain planet might be inclined to be a certain in certain position, or find them in certain position in terms of like their occupation.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah, that's more than I was expecting, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, even though, well, some articles, they were kind of contemplating the idea and discussing the possibility of how the planets might have been affecting the humans, but then they were like, well, moon affects the tides gravitationally, right?
Yep.
By being closer and further. And some people say like, oh, well, humans consist of 75% water, right? So maybe it affects us in that way. But again, if you remember, oceans are gigantic.
Yeah.
We are small, not big enough to probably have much effect on it. But then there are some other people who, there is a Russian physicist who proposed an idea of electromagnetic waves and relationship between planets, not communicating, but like transmitting the electromagnetic signals and mapping it out in a certain way. And the particles that kind of could penetrate almost everything. And that's why like your date and time of birth is important, because you literally leave the womb at a particular time, and maybe it makes an electromagnetic impression on your brain, and affects you that way. It's a theory. It's not been proven, obviously. How can you prove that with certainty? But it's a theory that's out there that might be a possibility, that at your time and date of birth in that particular place, the planets were, receiving signals, and we cannot be like, no, electromagnetic forces are not true. But I mean, well, when the sun is messing up, we can feel it.
Yeah, for sure.
Come on.
I feel like we even came up with a theory like that on our own when we were talking about this.
Yeah. That's some kind of energy that is just not visible and not known, might be in some way, affecting the universe.
It's interesting because one of the articles I read that was criticizing actually specifically mentioned that theory.
This theory?
And debunked it pretty handily, unfortunately, in that, like, a planet like Mars, the electromagnetic force from a planet is weaker when it hits us than, like, the electromagnetic force of my fridge.
Yeah, so I've seen those articles that say, like, well, if Mars electromagnetically can affect us, then fireflies and, like, small insects can affect us too. But
there's nothing to say it doesn't all combine into a whole. I'm
not saying that it's need to be necessarily electromagnetic forces. It can be a force that we just don't know about yet,
absolutely,
as humans. And also another point that another article made is that, assuming we all came from Big Bang, we are they kind of point out that we are all stardust, because we all made out of the same compounds. So what is it not to say that maybe us, as being particles of stars and that remnants of the Big Bang, are not affected by the universe in the same sense that everything else is affected by the universe, just because we have conscious, and some form of sentience. We don't know if there's more sentience or not in the universe. Doesn't mean that we're not affected by whatever ongoings are.
Just because our current science can't understand it doesn't necessarily mean we're not onto something.
But also I want to preface and say that no amount of personality tests, astrologies, birth chart, numerologies, or any other form of personality or future predictions can actually define one singular human being. We're too complex to be described by someone on a piece of paper and be like, this is who you are fully.
Yeah, you can't just put a person in a box and say this is them.
Your personality might be generally applicable to whatever someone says, no matter how extensive the research done on you specifically. Not even, because all astrological and all papers like that are catering to thousands and thousands and millions of people. It's not even like towards one person. So at that point, thinking that you, as a very unique, beautiful human being, can be described by someone online or anywhere is ludicrous, no matter if the astrology is true or not.
Right.
Unless someone does very targeted, specific reading towards you, it's still not going to be 100%.
Right, yeah.
At most, maybe 70.
Yeah, it might be close enough to where you start thinking about it, but...
I
yeah.
mean, I feel like our personality changes depending what situations we're in, who we're with, what we're doing, what stressors are, like what mood we're in. Like it's just like the what's the word that I'm looking for? The situation is so unique, and we as humans are so unique. I don't think we can ever be described by anything.
Yeah, you can't account for every variable.
No, but I do agree that sometimes you don't even need to believe in astrology necessarily. You can take it as a tool to make yourself feel better.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was touching on earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for your own personal,
yeah.
Feelings and mood and maybe something. And
if it helps, it doesn't matter if it's scientific.
Exactly. If it's like sounds like you and they're telling you that you can be a better person this way, or you have this that can be fixed or worked on, and you seem like, oh yeah, that does seem like me, maybe you can take it as an advice and become a better human. It never hurts anyways.
Yeah, absolutely lean into it if it's not bringing any negativity.
Yeah. The only thing I really don't like is like daily horoscopes. My stance on that. No matter whether you believe in horoscopes or not, I feel like daily horoscopes are just...
Yeah.
I personally would not want anything to tell me, you're gonna have a bad day today. Be careful about people with blue eyes. I'm like,
right?
What a random thought.
Yeah, that's very pseudoscience-y at that point, and also just kind of icky.
Yeah, like I don't want to have a bad day just because someone told me to have a bad day. I want to choose to have, well, not necessarily choose, but like I want to make sure that I'm not affected and self-fulfilling the prophecy of the daily horoscope. Because then I'm gonna find a problem with a blue-eyed person because I'm looking for a problem from a blue-eyed person now.
Yeah, the brain has a way of self-manifesting things if you go looking for it hard enough.
Yeah, I actually believe more in power of manifestation and law of attraction rather than astrology, to be completely honest.
Right. Yeah.
Even though it's also not very scientific, I think.
Right.
At least I feel like law of attraction and astrology kind of goes hand in hand. I feel like it might be utilizing the same same realm of energies.
Right. I don't have the best idea what law of attraction is. I mean, I can fill in the blanks from context on all that.
I'm sure I will fill you in later.
Fair enough.
About the subject matter.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is about horoscopes, too, is like, we touched on this a little last week sometime, but it kind of goes against the whole free will premise, too.
Yeah,
which I'm not a fan of that. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't have anything against birth charts where they tell you about your personality, or maybe your, like, strong and weak sides, and maybe... something general, something like, oh, you were born at this time, this place, this is how the planets were aligned, this is what you are, take what you will from it.
Right.
Instead of like, this is what you're gonna do today.
Yeah.
This is what you're gonna experience.
Map out your life. It's like,
yeah,
my life is variable, and it's what I make of it. It's not for you to decide how my day's gonna be.
Actually, speaking on the subject, I would prefer if all of this stuff was never negative. And even if it needed to say something negative, it could be like, this is about you, good, and be like, things you can improve on are this.
Right.
Dum.
But never anything
like, oh yeah, you're like, you're more prone to lying. I'm like, maybe don't say that, because someone can internalize it in the wrong way.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want anyone to tell me that I'm like a bad person or something.
Right.
I would rather them say like, oh, and maybe, I don't know, you're a very good person, and if you would like to, you can improve upon this quality of yours that potentially, potential you have.
Right.
Is it still hot?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What temperature are you holding it on?
131.
I see.
I don't want it to like get too cold as I'm forgetting to drink it, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it to be scorching either. So
Yeah, you're not like me. I love my tea really, really, really hot, like scalding hot.
so hot. Like I tried to drink it like that once. I couldn't taste anything for days.
Yeah, burned your tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I feel like astrology is interesting in that sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can see why a lot of people believe in it and take comfort in it.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm a little bit like, just don't rely on it too much.
Yeah, don't expect it to be super accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I find it as fun. For example, I love checking horoscopes of some people. Well, not horoscopes, astrological signs. I refuse to
Right.
check horoscopes because
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anyone telling me how my year, day, week, month, next minute is gonna go.
Yeah. For
If
sure.
I'm gonna be in a bad mood, it will be out of my own
Mhm.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Even if if it does fulfill the horoscope, I still don't want to know it.
Right. Yeah. It's better that way.
Yeah, it gives me an illusion of free will if
Mhm.
it's true, and
Right.
it gives me choice if it's not.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I would rather have the illusion of free will than to know I don't have it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Actually, like that brings to the point. Do you believe in faith? Because
Because
it's kind of like faith assumes that you don't have
Yeah, it
a
does.
choice. Like you're destined to get and do something, or like for certain something.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always kind of wrestled with that idea. It's fate is kind of romantic in a way sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but other times it is very much like a deterministic thing where it's kind of just making decisions for you.
I feel like fate for me is possible. I feel like maybe it's in the realm of like you are destined to get this outcome
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, but in between doesn't matter what you do. You have free
Right.
will to do whatever you will, but undoubtedly end up here.
Yeah.
It's like death, inevitable.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
no matter what you do in between, you're gonna get there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe fate is death.
Could
You
be.
might, oh wow, what a deep thought.
Wow.
What if fate is death?
Jeez. I mean, we are all fated to die.
Yeah, but like, I don't think fate is death because
Yeah.
different context though.
Right.
But yeah, what if fate is just like it's inevitable something,
Mm-hmm.
so you're gonna get there
Yeah.
no matter what you do.
Yeah. It's. I don't know. It's hard to reconcile for sure with free will.
I think, excuse me, we're all fated to be happy.
There you go. I like that one.
Yeah, I think we're all destined and fated to be happy,
There we go.
and we're all gonna get there.
Mhm.
Maybe, but at the same time, I don't think happiness is in the future. I think you have to seek happiness in right now.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
happiness is a choice. You have to choose to be happy.
Yeah. If you keep going into it saying I'll be happy tomorrow, tomorrow never comes.
Yeah, it's only today, only
Mhm.
now. Wow, how did we go from astrology to like philosophical ideas of happiness and death?
I mean, that's not that surprising of a jump, to be honest.
Fair, it's all
Um,
metaphysical, anyways.
Yeah, they kind of fit together, I think, for sure.
I don't know. It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always had this. I don't know. You ever think like someone comes into your life and it's like it was meant to be, like you're gonna learn something from them and that type of stuff, like they're.
I do believe every person we meet is there to teach us something.
Mm-hmm. That seems like it's a form of fate in a way.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, I think it, or not only teach us, but maybe we're there to teach someone, so it can go either
Right.
way.
Yeah, all relationships and interactions are a two-way street for sure. So.
But what I think is that maybe it happens that not necessarily that specific person would end up in your life, but maybe that particular lesson would need to be happen, and
Yeah.
it just happened to be that person.
That was exactly my mindset as well. It's eventually you're gonna learn that lesson.
Yeah, and if
It's
you didn't
just-
get the first time, you will sure run into something like that again until you then will learn the lesson.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I don't think like, for example, maybe I meet someone right tomorrow and we become friends,
Mm-hmm.
and that person is to teach me that, I don't know, the pain of betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have to be that particular person.
Right.
It could be any other person, as long as I got the lesson.
Right. Wow, it's windy out there.
It truly is. Wow. Did you see it's gonna snow next week?
Stop it. Stop it.
I know. Did you see it? Did you not see
I didn't.
the stars aligned and predict unhappiness next week?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be unhappy next week.
See, I just made my own horoscope for next week prediction. And I believe on someday next week, closer to the midweek, you will see right there.
Dang it.
I know, right?
I thought we were over this.
I thought so.
Yeah.
And I saw a reel today on Instagram, meme. It said like, fall, winter, fall, actual winter, winter, fall, spring, a second winter, actual spring. We're at the fall spring right now.
Yeah. That
Fake
sounds about
spring.
right. Yeah.
So the winter is gonna be next week,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're gonna be finally entering the actual, spring.
Yeah.
I know
Hopefully
it's
not.
dreadful. I'm not excited about it.
Hopefully we're not dealing with snow in April and May.
Ooh, hopefully not.
Just a late winter. God, I don't want to think about that. Why did I speak that
I
into the
mean,
air?
to be fair, it's so unusual
It really
because I mean, snow is right now in every state. It's so unexpected, right?
Yeah.
Like and states there that have a lot of snow don't have snow, and states that don't have snow have snow.
Yeah, it's very odd.
So it's odd that we're gonna get snow next week.
Yeah, for sure.
And imagine if we do get snow later too.
I don't want to imagine it.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I got a buddy in Colorado.
I don't like snow.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the general idea of snow.
Right.
I just don't like,
Don't
snow
like
being on the roads.
the logistics of living
Yeah, like how do you drive? Like how people like drive in the snow, like confidently.
Right. A part of it's having good tires, to be fair. Good snow tires, not just normal tires.
Just like, but then you still have to be on the road,
Yeah.
and then you have people around you too.
That's always my biggest hang up.
Like
I'm
it's not necessarily
confident.
just you; it's
Yeah.
just people.
I'm confident driving myself in the snow. I am not confident at all in other people. I do not trust those people.
Yeah, neither am I. Do I? I mean, I got in a car accident once, of no fault of my own, but
Right.
that was terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, back onto whatever topic. You wanted to say something? Or did I just misinterpret?
If I did,
Your
it
look.
was insignificant.
Okay,
So,
yes.
mhm.
But it's interesting how polarizing the response is to astrology in terms of science.
Right, yeah.
Like, people are like, well, can be in accordance with the science and can be proven this way, or maybe we're just too late into, or too, I don't know, something before we can actually even attempt to prove it. And then some people say like, oh, but then it's this way, it's cannot be proven because it's not even like real.
Right. Yeah.
I just went in a rumble. Like, did I make any sense? I don't know.
You made sense.
I don't know. I feel like it's an interesting topic. Which brings me to the topic of numerology. I know there is a lot of things that can be discussed in lieu of astrology. There's numerology. I think birth charts fall under astrology.
I think so, yeah.
There is also like tarot cards, psychics, mediums, and all that kind of
Right,
thing.
palm readings and whatnot.
Palm readings. Although I do feel like I have not read any. I did not do any research on palmistry. That's the way that's what it's called, to read palms, palmistry. But I feel like I don't necessarily, it's like physiognostics when people read your face.
Right.
I feel like the sign, there is definitely something behind palmistry and face reading, but maybe it's not necessarily scientific.
Right, but
in
it's
a way.
It's not necessarily like spiritual either or anything
No,
like that.
no.
Yeah,
I feel like it's in kind of like in relation to psychology. Because, for example, when you read faces, obviously you read like micro expressions, micro wrinkles and something. Because obviously when if I'm like, crossing my eyebrows this way, I'm gonna have the little deep wrinkle right here between my eyebrows, meaning I'm always like,
Right, yeah.
looking angry or something, or
Yeah, or like you generate worry lines on your forehead and stuff like that. Yeah.
or if you have more like lines in your smile line, that obviously you smile a lot, or you have a crow's feet, you probably smile a lot too.
Yeah, you can absolutely read that kind of stuff and kind of just get a general idea of the history of someone's personality
Yeah.
and then make kind of informed predictions about how they'll handle certain things.
Yeah. Also, I think how our eyes look also kind of can tell a lot, because when we're smiling, obviously our eyes turned a certain way,
Right.
and then we're not smiling, it's turned the other way or some other way.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume that you can kind of read the personality of a person by how their eyes look.
Yeah.
That's why they say like the eyes are windows to your soul,
Mm-hmm.
because you can look in someone's eyes and be like, oh my god,
Yeah.
I cannot read you because I don't know what it means.
Right.
But you can get a general vibe from a person that way,
Mm-hmm.
Like you can look at someone and be like,
Mm-hmm.
something about you is a bit sus.
Yeah, or you like see the crazy eyes and you know to get away or something like that.
Actually, I read an article, psychology something, that they said that the more whites you see around around the irises, the crazier the person is.
Yeah.
So like how in anime they do the same thing. Crazy people have tiny irises and pupils, right?
Yeah, they
you can
do.
see almost just white, and then
it's
like, or when they go in state of berserk,
yeah,
they like almost lose their eyes.
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's like kind of an analogy for not seeing reason or something in a way.
It's literally like that too in reality. The more wide open your eyes are,
yeah,
like if you see those eyes, I'm trying to show him right now. You won't see on camera.
Yeah, if you were just normally looking like that day to day, I'd be like, what in the world is she thinking?
That means like something is not particularly right.
Yeah.
And we don't know what it is, but it's not right. So
for sure.
At least be cautious. So usually people don't display like really bulging out eyes.
Yeah, something's
so
up.
that is not okay.
Yeah. Either there's something
scientifically
up with them.
proven too by psychology. So
Absolutely.
you can find that online and in Google in some articles.
It's
not
Either there's something up with them, or there's something up with something behind you, and you should run.
Yeah, most likely something is up with them. Well, even if they're not psychologically something, but they might be physically suffocating something. That's when your eyes are bulging out.
Yeah, your eyes do that more than just when you're going nuts, for sure.
Yeah, so
pain does it, horror
kind
does it.
of get the context clues, okay?
Yeah.
If they're just walking, nothing's going on, and they're looking a little crazy, they might be.
Yeah. No, it's wild how much the eyes can tell you about someone, though. Yeah.
And also, how often do you hear like, oh, they had dead eyes?
Yeah. Yeah, you see that, I feel like, a lot with like serial killers and whatnot, don't you? In a way.
Kinda. They have pretty cruel eyes.
Maybe not dead per se, but yeah, there's some sort of cruelty in them that you can see.
Yeah. So yeah, I can totally see how physiognostics or physiognomics, I don't know, so please don't be mad at me. This study of reading faces can be very valid. It also doesn't need to be scientific per se, because we don't have to really. It's not. I think it's very easily provable too.
Oh, for sure.
Because I know in Asian cultures they would have a court face reader who would look at heirs and children born to the emperor, and he would kind of describe their character and future by reading their faces.
Interesting.
Which that's a little sus to me. I don't know how that works, because it's a newborn or a child that has nothing yet.
There's a lot less information to go off of, for sure. Yeah.
But then at the same time, it kind of brings me to the question of like nature versus nurture. How much of your personality came from nature, and how much of it came from nurture?
Right.
And can one overweigh the other, and like what affects more? Because They actually ask the same questions in serial killers all the time, because
Mm-hmm.
how many kids end up in similar situations to serial killer situations, with abusive parents in unhealthy, unhappy households, dysfunctional
Right.
parents, and something like that, with like terrible childhoods, with something terrible going on.
Mm-hmm.
How many kids are in that positions? They do not go nuts.
Right.
They
It's
do
like,
not go out and start murdering people.
yeah, for every one serial killer that grew up that way, there's like a handful of kids
Of
who
other
grew up
kids,
to
yeah,
be
just
like
the same way. I
wonderful
mean,
people.
grew up in the same in similar circumstances, that grew up, I won't say normal, because I mean it's still a lot of trauma and stuff,
Yeah.
but I mean they're not going on murder sprees.
Yeah, they dealt with it in a realistic and healthy fashion, and they moved on with their lives.
Well, at least not violent fashion.
Right.
At least
Yeah,
not
fair.
violent fashion towards other people. They can be self-destructive, but not necessarily towards others.
Right. Yeah, they could be a jerk, or they could have maybe like drug issues or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, as long as they're not out murdering people.
So yeah, actually, I read a study that they did find that a lot of serial killers had been hit on the head, or somehow had a head trauma as children, as like
Right.
young toddlers.
Something that would end up with a brain injury or some sort of chemistry
Something
imbalance
like
or
that,
something.
yep.
Yeah, that's fair.
A lot of swings,
Yeah.
like the childhood swings when you swing on.
Oh yeah,
A lot of serial killers were hit on by a swing on the head.
that's scary. I got hit on the head with a swing.
At
When I
what
was a
age
kid.
though?
Like 12. I might have been old enough to
No,
where
no,
it's...
that's too old. I
yeah.
think they're where I'm talking about like 3,
Yeah,
like
right.
2, 3. I think up to 4.
When stuff's still properly developing.
Yeah, like
like a
you were
rapid
still
rate.
like really, really underdeveloped.
Yeah,
Because at
that's fair.
12 you're fine.
Yeah.
You already have a very much base personality. You already have an how Freud likes to say, an ego.
Mm-hmm.
So you already have basics of
Yeah.
self-sufficient human being. I mean, at 12 years old, for goodness sake, you some girls became mothers already.
Right.
Like
yeah.
you're clearly already okay.
Yeah, and most people are starting to form at least some basic level of cause and effect in their head.
Well, actually, did you know that
No?
that you get your final, like, you know, oh, why am I so tongue-tied today? You finally get your brain developed by 27.
Right.
And that's why teenagers have such hard time understanding things, because they don't have a very loose cause and effect.
Right.
They don't have that because if they do this, the actions will result in punishment or whatever.
Right.
They just be like, huh,
I mean, they might have some inkling of it, maybe, but it's not a very stable foundation.
maybe. Like, for example, concept of death.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of it's scientifically proven that teenagers do not have concept of death.
Right.
They cannot comprehend it or connect it. So for that's why they do all the stupid things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like enjoy the rides and maybe skydiving or jumping from high places or going in a frozen lake or something. Like
Oh, yeah.
they don't think that it will lead to something as permanent as death.
Yeah, I felt invincible as a kid.
Exactly. You
Amount
cannot you cannot consciously understand that that's what might lead to.
Mm-hmm. Like, the amount of stupid things I did on my bike alone, like, yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't register.
Mm-hmm. Like, maybe in the back of my mind there was an, oh, maybe this is dangerous, but it was absolutely drowned out by, wee, this is a good time.
Exactly.
So-
So like, and I feel like it's interesting to think about it, because natural will to survive in humans, I feel like, is almost turned off in teenagers.
It really seems like it sometimes. Or, like, just kids in general from age 0 to, I don't know, like 17
27.
or so. Yeah.
25
Well,
maybe.
I
Maybe
don't know.
20, 25.
Yeah, you start to get, like, a functional sense of it in your late teens, but it's
I
absolutely
don't think
not
so.
fully.
I think you get it.
I think it depends on the
towards-
person.
I think we dilute ourselves and they just pretend to be a little more mature.
Fair.
No, I'm not throwing shades at anyone. I'm more reflecting myself back then,
Mm-hmm.
because I am out of my teenage years
Mm-hmm.
and very early 20s. So I even though I was not the most adventurous, I did not get in trouble. I was almost like a perfect child in the sense that, in terms of like getting in trouble or
Right.
doing anything really potentially dangerous or ending up in the situations, I still ended up in some weird stuff or thinking about weird stuff.
Right. Yeah, as did I.
So I'm like, okay, even if I ended up in situations without thinking through, again, not putting myself better than anyone else. No,
Right.
I'm just saying that Aleister was more adventurous. I was not adventurous at all.
And I wasn't particularly adventurous, to be honest.
Well, you did weird things on your bike. You just said, right?
Yeah, more than you.
Oh, absolutely.
But compared to the other kids, I was very cautious.
So because we were very cautious, as very cautious people, looking back, even us, we were like, what the heck? What were we thinking? So I think up until maybe 22, 23,
that's when you really start to figure
you're
out.
still a little too adventurous.
Right, yeah.
Not in a bad way. I feel like that's why we as species actually survived,
Right.
because at that age you do not have that fear of death.
Right.
So you're more likely to go on adventures, find things out, figure things out, get places. Because the more you get older, the older you get. Why did I say the more you get older? The older you get, the more fear you accumulate.
Right, yeah.
The more understanding like of consequences, and those can be paralyzing.
Yeah. The more you know how terrifying everything is.
Exactly. Yeah, knowledge is scary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, knowledge is power, but kind of like crippling power.
Yeah.
Because like I know, but because I know.
Yeah. But luckily also with age comes the knowledge that you can turn into like courage and confidence to get over it and not be completely paralyzed by the fear. So
I just feel like every age, every period of life has its value. So
For
like
sure.
obviously teenagers are fearless and just so courageous, even though they might be fearing
Awkward
like
as
so
heck.
like awkward or fearing social anxiety, experiencing social anxiety. They're still very, very much courageous in a very unique way. They're not afraid to express themselves and go off and experience things in whatever way they do. I mean, I'm not saying don't be careful and smart about what you go off. Make smart decisions that are not gonna destroy your health or your relationships, obviously. But I prop them for being so fearless.
Absolutely.
In certain situations.
Yeah. Be smart about it.
Yeah,
Smart
for
as
example,
you can be,
don't experiment with drugs.
but
Drugs are not going to bring you any health. I
Right.
don't see why it's even like a necessity.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is just the whole I was told not to, therefore I will mindset.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, I feel like it's not necessarily they told me not to do it. You should just realize that, again, teenagers are not particularly should realize kind of
Right.
people.
Their whole
But-
mindset is it's cool to be rebellious, basically.
But at some point, you need to understand that certain things are not good for anyone,
Right.
and that's the drugs. So don't do them, kids, please. I do not support that in any shape, way, or form.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, alcohol, smoking, cigarettes or weed, they're all not very healthy. Unless, obviously, it's medically prescribed to you.
Right.
I'm talking about weed specifically.
Yeah, for sure.
And even then, I'm just like, well,
Yeah,
I suppose.
I support people's decision to do it, but I don't exactly support the fact that it's healthy. For sure.
Yeah. Like, it's legal in some states, so if you choose to do it and you're bring no harm, fine. I personally don't think it's a good idea because when you smoke, I feel like it still affects your lungs.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and I think that is unhealthy. Like, if smoking was not affecting you in the way it does,
Right.
I wouldn't give a care in the world if someone did it.
For
But
sure.
also the smell.
Yeah, that's one of my
Smell
big hang-ups.
is not even like pleasant, so I.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, that was really far from astrology or numerology.
It was. That
But
was quite the tangent.
So in numerology, I read that it started as science of numbers, right? And alphanumeric, kind of in a sense, like it's letters tying to numbers and numbers making this way. And I didn't do much research on it because I forgot that numerology kind of ties into astrology and the same general topic. So I didn't do much research. So maybe if you're interested, we can do another episode specifically on numerology.
Right, absolutely.
But I was thinking about numbers.
As one does.
Which I rarely think I think. But what if certain numbers have certain belief because in mathematics they serve certain purpose? Like, like golden ratio.
Right, and like prime numbers and whatnot.
Yeah, or certain theorems.
There's something to certain.
Or that golden ratio numbers that grow. It's like, what was it, 1, 3, 3, 4?
I don't know the specifics, but I do know what you're talking about.
To make that perfect shape.
Oh yeah, the spiral that never intersects with itself.
Yep.
Not it intersects, but it never repeats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
Right. Yep.
So what if numbers came from, like, numerology was derived from that belief? I might be wrong. Again, I didn't do much research, so I actually don't know. That's just me pondering on the idea why people are so fascinated with numbers.
And
or
just math in general, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's so much weird random math in the world. So
that doesn't make any sense.
Right, like fractals, for example.
Just don't even start. I don't want to think about it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Google fractals if you don't know. They're everywhere.
That's a bit too high level for me. Our coworker might really like those.
True.
But certainly not I.
I just know if you look at like not certain things, if you look at pretty much anything under a microscope, if you get to a certain level of magnification, you're going to see fractals at like the cellular level of things. And it's just wild.
Well, yeah, scientific notation is interesting how they add like 10 to the power of minus to define like very, very small things, and 10 to the power of plus something. It's very, very big things, and that's how they measure anything.
Right.
Because obviously writing like 58 trillions is tedious, because like
yeah, you're not
come on, so many zeros.
Yeah, you wouldn't have that much space for that.
Yeah, at some point there's like the numbers are too big. Did you see those videos where they would kind of show a human on Earth, then they kind of zoom out?
Oh yeah.
Then Earth, and then they put like will show how many Earths can fit in the sun and how many suns can fit into like this, and then they show like how many suns can fit in the galaxy and how many galaxies can fit into this, and then they show like a black hole, for example, which is like the size of multiple galaxies or something.
Right. Yeah. You end up with like this big blown up view of the universe with a little "you are here" sign, and it's like you can't even see.
No, I mean, like, our sun is so gigantic, and when you start stacking our own sun into like cubes of it, and then you start stacking those cubes into something, and that becomes a cube, and just kind of like,
yeah,
how big is that? I cannot, like, how can you write a number like that?
Right, it's crazy. How would you even
that number would need its own scientific notation,
right,
at that point, like
that's hard to even just conceptualize.
Yeah, I cannot. I think people who can think about sizes of like that and quantify and calculate things on that level are obviously they're geniuses, because their IQ is probably just off the charts. But I do not have that capability, so it's really hard for me to think about something so grandiose.
Yeah, same here. Every now and then I'll try, and my brain will overheat a little bit.
And you're kind of like, ooh, I need to take a cold bath or something. Like, hey, let's eat ice cream. Brain freeze.
Yeah, or let me go watch some silly YouTube videos that dumb it back down for me a little bit.
Yeah, actually, like, I think I watched a video that I swear took like half of my IQ. I was just like, oof, that's not how I would want to.
Been there.
Yeah. But yeah, so numerology is interesting too, because Someone told me that there's thing as life number, soul number. I think I told you about that, right?
Yeah, I think we were talking about that on like
And
Wednesday or
it's
something.
like from number from 1 to 9.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very skeptical because how can you put 8 billion of people into 9 numbers?
Right, that's a very, very tiny box.
It's so tiny. At this point, I believe more in astrology than the life number because like
Right.
8 billion, 8 billions of people falling into like a birth chart is much more unique
Yeah,
than 9 numbers.
there's more variables there.
Yeah, it's just like, come on, 9 numbers. You only get one, and it doesn't even change.
Right.
And then you also get like your name number. Well, you combine all the letters. Every letter is assigned a number, and then you combine them all together, and then you get one number, and that is also something. I just don't know what it is.
Right.
And that also gives you a number, but that's also not unique. I mean, they only count like the 1 through 9, I think, maybe 11. Certain numbers don't apparently. Certain numbers cannot.
I was kind of curious about that, and I forgot to ask. Like, and fine if you don't know, but did they even go into any kind of like how they assign numbers to the letters? Like, is there any explained significance there, or is it just
I have
arbitrary?
no idea.
Right.
I have no idea. I'm sure there's some kind of explanation. I just personally don't know about it because that's not what I am really interested in.
Right, that's fair. No.
I don't really put too much stock in numerology. My cousin, though, she loves numerology. She reads about a lot about it. She's like, oh my God, you're like squared numbers. There's a square that you can kind of, their numbers accumulate, and like, oh, your square is so amazing. I did that square, and it didn't show me in a very favorable light, so I refuse to believe in it. No, I don't want to associate with this.
Right, yeah. That makes sense.
On the other hand, our coworker, who I was talking about in the beginning of the video, she loved it.
That sounds about right.
Oh, it sounds nice. Like, I refuse the notion of this being true because it doesn't show me in a good light. Yeah, so I'm like, no, I don't want to believe in this.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I wonder what other ways people. No, that's not how I wanted to go with the thought because I forgot it midway. Thus it means not what I was gonna say. Am I even making any sense today? I feel like stars are misaligned and the electromagnetic fields are messing with my mind today. It was all in my horoscope today, okay? I read it that I'm gonna be messy today, and I am. Obviously my brain is not straight and my eyes are crazy and bulging out, so it means something.
Send help.
Oh my God. Maybe you should say something while I'm gathering my bearings back.
Fair enough. I mean, back to the whole kind of like how astrology was viewed historically.
Okay.
Moving away from numerology at this point. I read about how it was kind of, I don't want to say used per se, but it was related to like calendrical calculations, which is basically just the math that calculates the calendars, like the future of how you find the days and whatnot. It's like between the Gregorian calendar and the Julian calendar, you can like do some math to figure out certain days and holidays and whatnot. And it was kind of an interesting read. There's a lot of weird equations I didn't even begin to try to understand because it was like they were like this tall, this wide, and yeah. But I don't know. It's interesting how the math is done to just figure out a future calendar, and how it used to be somewhat related to like astrological stuff in a way.
Well, maybe they calculated like they went off based on the stars.
Yeah, I mean most calendars originated with that
from
kind
the
of thing.
stars.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think you could probably work that back. Well, you can absolutely work that back and figure out where certain planets are going to be in the sky on certain days and stuff like that, as well as where they were thousands of years ago. So,
isn't that fascinating?
There's also an interesting thing I read too, how certain people
Mm-hmm.
are able to do that math in their head just like naturally.
What?
And it's actually an official indicator of a savant.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
When you can do those gigantic equations in your mind?
Yep.
I can
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, that's wild to me. Like the whole thought of savants in general is kind of wild to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you know what a savant is,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
I didn't look up the definition. I probably should have. Do you want to explain what you think it is? Because I'm sure I'd butcher it.
You go ahead.
Savants are basically just people that are, I don't want to say supernaturally gifted, but like they're people that have this weird genius level understanding of either a certain thing or sometimes many things. Like they can
Mm-hmm.
just do insane math in their head in half a second and always be right and stuff like that. Or like
Or be
they're
geniuses in something like, I mean, almost supernatural level geniuses in certain fields.
yeah, like music. I know I've read of like savants in either piano or violin where it's just like that you can play a piece to them that they've never heard before.
And they will be able to play it back to you
Yeah.
perfectly after and just
Mm-hmm.
listen
Perfectly
to it once.
in
Yeah.
key, proper timing, all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I believe there was research done to say that a lot of savants are on a spectrum
Mm-hmm.
because their brains overwork in a certain way that they cannot do the other stuff.
Right.
Usually, that's social
Yeah.
parts of, their life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like we've probably discussed this before, but it's
Maybe like just
vague.
between the two
Yeah.
of us.
It's interesting how like intellect and
Oh yeah, how intellect
yeah,
affects your social ability
Yeah,
and
it's-
emotional intelligence.
it's like an inverse scale a lot of the time.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
your brain is clearly compensating for something with something else in
Mhm.
a way, it seems like.
But also, I feel like it not necessarily always compensates. I don't think one detracts from another. I
Mhm.
think it's because, well, it certainly could, because obviously, in certain ways, I know a lot of autistic or kids or just kids on the spectrum. They can be geniuses. There was one case of a boy who drew 300 types of birds on a sheet of paper
Hmm.
perfectly,
Wow. That's
like
impressive.
actually correctly, with
Huh.
all the markings and colorings, and just like
Right.
just by himself,
Like
without
from
really-
memory.
Yeah, kinda, yeah.
Jeez.
So, but he was not. He was considered autistic,
Mm-hmm.
but he was like really good. And there are kids who like could draw an entire map
Right.
just out of like sheer memory.
Mhm.
But anyways, what I'm saying that I feel like a lot of the times when people have a very high IQ, they think so quickly, they can process information so fast that they find other people boring.
Yeah, it causes friction in relationships.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they think in different
Mm-hmm.
quality, quantity, and speed,
Yeah.
and maybe the subjects that they're interested in and that they can understand, because obviously they're probably really good at calculations and science or other, maybe music or art or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and other people are just not up that level and they think too slow. When question is posed and the person with a hierarchy or higher genius level, they already know, and the other person is yet to comprehend the question itself, let
Right.
alone the answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for the genius to
Right.
be like on the same page or be patient enough. They just don't. It's like when you know something, it's you have a hard time understanding that other person does not get that.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
it's why adults get so angry at children,
Mm-hmm.
because like, well, why can't you just behave?
Right. And they
Because-
just don't even know the concept of
Yeah,
behave.
because for us, behaving is like sit quietly, don't disturb, don't create messes. But the
Mhm.
child does not know that.
Right.
I'm not saying that one is better and the other is not. It's just how
Mhm.
different mindsets work.
Right. Yeah.
So having patience is not an innate ability that people have,
Mm-hmm.
or they rarely possess such
For sure.
unique and amazing quality. I do not. I'm not the most patient person.
Yeah, you can be.
I can be, but I don't usually choose to utilize it.
Fair. Yeah.
But yeah, so I can see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Still fascinating that how they can do it.
Mm-hmm. Same with like perfect recall, stuff like that, to like photographic memory. And whatnot.
Eidetic memory.
Yeah, like that's always been wild to me too.
Yeah, just remembering everything. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of find it a tad bit inconvenient because I would not want to remember every single thing.
I wouldn't either.
Imagine laying in bed at night and thinking, oh my God, 2 years ago, 2 years, 3 weeks, 2 days, 4 hours, 36 minutes, and 18, 19, 20 seconds ago, this person said this in that tone, this sentence, this composition in that situation. You like,
I already have enough trouble with that as it is.
I know. I would not want to remember every single interaction or every single moment that might have been better or done differently.
Right. Like
and ponder over it at night.
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be great when you're taking a test or doing something at work potentially.
But you're not taking a test every single day.
Yeah, that most of your life is not that.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, it's cool in adventure books because, like, oh, I remember this magical spell. I'm going back to Harry Potter because Hermione Granger had eidetic memory.
Right.
But
Oh yeah, she did, didn't she?
yeah,
I forgot.
because she could recall all the books she read.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if it was a little more isolated, for like example books, that would be okay. Or like music you've heard.
Right.
But then no, I wouldn't want to remember every single song I heard because like imagine how boring that is. You've heard it once and then you can never listen to it again because it doesn't bring you joy anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas now it's like if I hear a song I heard on the radio 15 years ago,
it's just like, oh yay, I forgot about it. It's so exciting.
Yep.
In the same realm of books, like I sometimes want to reread the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to remember every single part of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm actually excited when I forget the story because I'm like, oh my God, I remember I really like the story.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember it, so now I get to reread it.
Yeah, for sure. I've kind of been on a kick like that lately, actually.
Really?
Just going back and rereading. Well, you'll disagree with reading because most of my reading is audible. Listening, consuming.
I do not agree that audible is reading. Nope.
Right. It's consumption of media, but it's not reading.
Reading for me is very much an action that you take.
Yeah.
I read.
Mm-hmm.
You know that.
Yeah.
I do not listen to my books.
Right.
I've listened to one book in my entire life, and because I really wanted to actually read it, and it was Stephen Hawking's Brief History of Time, I had to listen to it. It was really hard for me to go through the entire book reading it.
Right.
It's a very dense book. You can agree, right, Aleister? You started it?
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, I know. I lent it to you. But I don't know if you opened it.
Oh, yeah, I got to like page 12.
Right? And then you had to close and be like, I cannot any longer.
Well, no, then you wanted me to read that other story that I tried to read.
Oh, that one?
Yeah. So, I know that was a while ago.
Yeah, that was. But, I mean, for me, when I started reading, I would read it. I would get to chapter 4 or 5, and then my mind would naturally start to wander, and then I would forget the last 2 paragraphs that I read, and then I would have to reread it, but my mind would still be wandering. So at that point, I would be obviously in the mindset that it's not the right time for me to read anymore.
Right.
I would close it and I would put it away, and then forget about it, and then when I would be back, I would already forgotten the 4 chapters, so I would have to restart.
Right.
And then this cycle the vicious cycle would repeat, and so I would never be able to go past certain chapter, and then I'm like, okay, I have to listen to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I cannot sit and read it.
That's fair.
People who read a lot, you probably can agree with me that when you read fiction, you do not read every single word. You read it diagonally, or you don't have to comprehend every single sentence you read. It's not necessary. Majority of the time, you can probably skip a point or 2 and be like, it's fine. And even if it's important, it will come back later and will be explained again, and maybe you will have a moment of confusion, like, who is this person?
Yeah, but you'll absolutely fill in the blanks.
But it's gonna be
it'll
okay.
Explained again.
Yeah, I'm sure. If you're not lazy, you can go back and maybe find that moment that probably they introduced the detail.
But if you're reading about quantum mechanics,
you probably want to read every single word and comprehend every single sentence.
Yeah, even
which
then
is
you might
really
still not.
hard.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a very interesting book about space, so it kind of ties into astrology a little bit.
A little bit, as well as future episodes we're planning on doing.
Yeah, we're planning to do episodes on space and physics.
I'll need to get through that before we do
Wait,
that.
talking about that, don't
Mhm.
you think astrology falls maybe into metaphysics?
I don't know enough about metaphysics to say yes or no, to be honest.
Well, in terms of like, it's also unknown science and it's like all pseudoscience, and maybe it's part of it or maybe it's not. It could possibly operate some invisible forces that are not known yet to humans. Wow, that was a long sentence. I'm so sorry. What if it's like that? Then it
could be.
probably would fall under this
Hmm.
metaphysics because it's not yet
Yeah, it could fit under that
Very-
umbrella, I suppose.
much known.
Yeah.
I kind of, oops. Wow, that was scary. I thought I'm just going to pull your laptop
I really need to
away.
improve this setup.
So I was wondering, like, because I sweep everything, all supernatural, all like weird stuff under that umbrella because I'm like, well, I don't know.
Right, yeah.
So maybe astrology kind of falls under the same general
Yeah.
premise.
Yeah, I kind
Of
of...
an unknown science, pseudoscience, potentially not true, potentially maybe true.
Right, I kind of like that approach. That's the open-minded approach, I think.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, we can't prove this is science now, therefore we're always going to be skeptical and it's never going to be science. You say, we don't understand it now, but maybe we will in the future.
Mhm.
Maybe it'll be proved to actually be true.
Maybe we don't have to prove it.
Right, yeah. That's also possible.
I mean, maybe it's just like something that is driven only by belief.
Which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It might not float my boat, but if it floats someone else's boat, who am I to judge? So,
What a wise outlook on
Yeah.
a
So-
subject matter.
so long as it's not negatively impacting someone else's life anyway.
Yeah, I mean, goodness, like you can believe and do whatever you want and like and stuff like that, as long as it's not destructive to yourself or other people
Right.
in
yeah,
any way.
For sure.
I strongly believe that your personal bubble can be filled with whatever you want, as long as that personal bubble does not
Mhm.
affect someone else's personal bubble.
I was just about to say exactly that.
Right?
Yep.
Yes, we discussed it already. That's
Mhm.
what my belief is in social interactions in general.
Yeah, your personal bubble, what is it? Your personal freedom's bubble ends where someone else's begins.
So you
Basically.
can believe and do whatever you want.
Yep.
Just don't burst anyone else's bubbles.
Absolutely.
I don't know. What else is there to cover in astrology and numerology? I wish I did a little more research on numerology and haven't
Right.
forgotten about it, but I did.
Hmm.
But I think in the same, for me, tarot cards are kind of fall under the same
Mm-hmm.
general realm of thinking as numerology does.
Yeah, they're a little pseudosciencey.
Well, not necessarily just that, but also in tarot cards they have numbers, obviously. Like
Right.
this is like is Fool, it's a 0, so it's a beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's like 2 cups, I believe. My cousin, she loves tarot, so she tells me a little bit about it. So like 2 cups represent 2 people in love, I think, or some kind of romantic relationship or relationship of some sort,
Fair.
which too makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But actually, tarot cards, I read the history of it, that it said that tarot cards came from regular playing cards.
Interesting.
And then people just used the decks to do all the like readings and stuff, and it just evolved. But
Right. They
further.
started making custom ones
Yeah.
that fit better.
I don't know, maybe, yeah. And
Something like that.
and then the tarot cards that are classical right now, I don't remember the name of them, were drawn and printed and kind of accepted in early 1900s
Wow. That's a long time ago.
or maybe 1800s.
Hmm.
I don't remember now.
Interesting.
Also not a subject that I did a lot of research on.
Fair.
I was just curious because of my cousin.
Right. Makes sense.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
is there anything else to add to the subject?
I mean, talking about signs, I was going to make a joke reference to the Zodiac Killer.
Please do.
I don't actually know much about the Zodiac Killer.
Oh,
Other than the Zodiac Killer was... You know, now that I think about it, I can't remember if that was actually real or just something from, like, a TV show.
what?
The Zodiac Killer.
No, it was a killer.
It was? Okay, it
yeah,
was real.
no one actually found out who the Zodiac Killer is.
Oh, yeah, that was the whole thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Zodiac Killer was basically someone that just a serial killer that killed people based on their zodiac signs, I believe, right?
Really? I actually don't. I know it's a serial killer, and I know
Yeah.
but oddly enough, I was never curious enough about the whole history behind.
I'm actually kind of shocked that you don't know more about this, to be honest.
I'm sure I've heard about it, but I
Right.
listen to so many true crime
That's
cases that all of them blend together, and they all kill people. So I'm like, well,
I
another
suppose.
murderer.
Yeah, one killer, another killer. One of them has a different flavor.
And I'm just like, they're all killers. They're all awful, horrible people.
Fair. Well, I guess just leave it at the fact that the Zodiac Killer existed, and it kind of ties into astrological signs.
If you think about it, everything ties into something
There are a lot of connections.
between every possible subject
Mm-hmm.
in the world. Well, with that, guys, we'll be over there, and we'll see you next time. And remember, be polite, respectful, and open-minded. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.